在哪里呢？好，朗日塔巴格西。
Now here, Geshe Laritampa spoke as follows. When, out of jealousy, others abuse and attack me in unjust ways, I should take such unwarranted losses upon myself and offer the victory to others. It sounds really wonderful. Can you actually do it? Can you actually practice it when others were to slander you and harm you out of jealousy, even without any reasons? If they were to use harsh words, if they were to slander you and shame you and use all kinds of harsh words, with such injustice, would you be able to accept the unwarranted losses upon yourself and offer the victory to the others? In this world, nowadays, it is definitely not the same. So sometimes I feel that when the Buddhist practitioners are really excellent practitioners, they have such a kind heart, they may not fit very well into the society because nowadays the worldly beings would especially bully the ones that's too weak, that seemingly to be too weak. In our community, it is a bit better, but sometimes it still happens. Even if you don't retaliate to the others an eye for an eye, if the other person were to feel that you are harmless, they will continuously to bully you. So the mundane beings are quite smart in that regard, but in the Mahayana teachings, it is indeed quite true. But in the vicious people, in the crowd of vicious people, it is not quite appropriate. If you were to keep practicing patience, they would just keep on attacking you. But this is really the teaching of the Mahayana text, the Mahayana doctrine. Furthermore, from Gyaltse Tokme himself, when someone with the eye of aggression amid many beings humiliates me and with terrible statements difficult to bear, so that I have no chance even to lift my head upright, may I at that time remember my promise. That is exactly the time that you need to remember the promise to bear those kinds of harsh words. That's the true practice. He continues, even if I see an enraged person frowning with intense wrath, who, before the eyes of a crowd of many people, personally slanders me with assorted vile remarks that strike at my secret shortcomings. This is also a similar content. Whomsoever slanders you, harms you, in a large assembly, in a large crowd, started to humiliate you, you should use compassion to accept him and receive the information in such a way and not letting the other person create more vice. You should contemplate in such a way. May I then, wishing to benefit him, since this affectionate one cuts through the poisonous tree of my pride, cut down his own venomous tree of suffering with a sharp weapon of skillful intelligence and great love. I should, at that time, wishing to benefit that person and cut through the poisonous tree of both of my pride and the other's pride. Or cut through the poisonous suffering of self and others. At the times of when others were to harm you without compassion, without skillful means, it will be difficult to endure. But when we look at the biography of great masters and the Buddha, you should be very clear of what to do. They indeed had put their actions, put compassion into practice and not creating harm to self and others. Do not practice retaliation at all. He taught this and practiced accordingly. These principles are virtuous practices whereby we can refrain from retaliating against those who have disgraced us and humiliated us and slandered us, caused us suffering, and so forth. They should be practiced in all contexts of lesser as well as the great vehicle. In particular, according to the great vehicle, one must provide for harm doers wishing to establish them in the perfect enlightenment. Well, it is not just the practice of Mahayana, it is also the practice of the lesser vehicle, the Hinayana as well. There's the 4 practices of Shramana at the times when people were to beat you, to slander you, to harm you, you should not retaliate. This is the teaching in the lesser vehicle. Don't even mention about the greater vehicle. If you were to do exactly the opposite, then you are definitely violating the Buddhist teachings, let it be lesser or greater vehicle. And then according to the Mahayana, you should, on top of that, wish the best for the other person. They would wish them to be in perfect enlightenment. A sutra says that those who abuses me and make me unhappy, may they all become enlightened. Some of the supervisors, they're very good at slandering others, to criticize the others, and sometimes use very humiliating words to speak of the others. I think language is very much related to people's level of culture. If you're cultivated and you're brought up in a well-educated environment, then your language would naturally be very gentle. For that reason, I really wish that all of our Dharma teachers over here, the supervisors here, you have to be very careful at times of speaking. Otherwise, that could create negative impressions upon the others. You should remember that you, at the times of being slandered and in all kinds of situations, you should wish the others enlightenment. And then in the way of the Bodhisattva states, may those scorning me or causing me any other harm, those who are humiliating me and insulting me, all have the fortune to fully awaken. While from the worldly aspect, which is not necessarily implemented with a view of emptiness, and then in the later part it talks about how to practice it from the ultimate angle in the memorandum of the preliminary practices at the times of giving teachings of wisdom paramita. It talks about self and self-grasping. The analysis is really good. So over here it talks about the 2 aspects, the ultimate and the relative. And especially when it comes to the ultimate, the teaching is given through the most ultimate teachings given by Nagarjuna. Without the foundations of Sutrayana and Mantrayana Dharma studies, it might be difficult for you to study the memorandum of preliminary practices or give further explanations of it. When it is time for you to give Dharma teachings to the others, sometimes you may have to give teachings to your disciples, mainly based on the 5 treatises, and sometimes it is a book that you yourself can relate to very much. This is how the 8 worldly pursuits are equalized from a relative perspective. As for their sameness from an ultimate standpoint, the way of the Bodhisattva states, therefore, among all these empty things, what is there to gain and what is there to lose? This is at the end of the wisdom chapter in the way of the Bodhisattva. All findings, gains, losing, and so forth are taught to be equal from the perspective of the ultimate.
Sonam dai tamche zubanya tona nibe jana pamche jirga nanchi ralon chuba 直奔从人着哇着修